Thank you, thank you. Good afternoon. The Chilliwack Creative Commission is gratefully located on the traditional territory of the Stalo people. You know, we start every Creative Third Thursday that way. And, you know, we make that statement, and it's become one of those things where you might think you just sometimes might be just ticking some kind of a box and doing that. So it's just over a year since we did this properly. We had one of our Creative Commission members, Sandra Bonner-Peters, come on the stage and talk a little bit about the local Indigenous community that we live in and we're grateful to be in. So being just over a year since we did that, I want to make the statement again and express our sincere gratitude for the opportunity to live, work, and be creative on the traditional territory of the Stalo people. And we recognize and appreciate the cultural heritage that they bring and the creativity and the deep connection the Stalo people have to this land. So live. Well, thank you, thank you. So live from Studio C, welcome to Creative Third Thursdays. Hello, studio audience. Yay! It's amazing what we can do with just a few people. So welcome to the creation of our YouTube video for this month. You guys nailed it. You showed up. You got here. And Creative Third Thursday is an important part of it. It is about the mingle, the getting together with other creative people. So it's one of those events that's best taken in live. But if you are watching this link on YouTube right now, I'm thinking about joining us next month at Studio C. That would be cool. So let's say thank you to our fellow Creative Commission member and our host, the man recording us here at Studio C today, Tim McAlpine. He's waving. I am Geoff Edwards. Our Creative Third Thursdays committee is super happy to have you in our audience here today. And if you are watching on YouTube, where's my tally? If you are watching on YouTube, please consider using our like button if you do. And we really appreciate when our YouTube viewers share. And of course, all our studio audience immediately after they're going to go to YouTube. And you guys are all going to share this video, right? Thank you very much for saying yes. We're working actually to build a creative community starting here in Chilliwack. And Creative Third Thursdays is a place for good conversations from wherever you're tuning in, or even live in the audience. So Creative Third Thursdays are brought to you by the Chilliwack Creative Commission, a committee of the Chilliwack Economic Partners Corporation, a resource for film, interactive, and digital media. The organization's here to attract and make economic growth easier in the creative sector. Another event we put on every year is our Pechakucha event in the fall. It's a really fun, exciting evening. Even some of the people in the audience every now and then that show up here have done our Pechakucha event, and I think they all nodding. They're nodding. It was a good night. So watch for that coming up in the fall. And if you are looking to connect with the Creative Commission, you can do so by searching Creative Commission at businessinchilliwack.com. And if you're sharing with your own network this afternoon, and why wouldn't you be? You'd be just pulling out your phone, taking pictures of Geoff on stage. Use our hashtag CreativeChilliwack. We appreciate that too. So wave if it's your first time at a Creative Third Thursday. Yes, welcome. And wow, there's usually about 3 or 4 people that are first-time attendees, so we want to make sure you understand that Creative Third Thursdays is your monthly opportunity to visit with other creative people in or near Chilliwack and those that want to meet them. And remember, it's a tradition around here. We have cold, they're always nice and cold, frosty refreshments. So I'll open it afterwards. So let's say hello. Well, he's not here. He didn't come, did he? We have a photographer showing up later, so watch for him. His name is Alex Hart, everyone, and he'll be taking a few photographs probably after we got the show underway, because he was going to be getting here a little late. So with that in mind, let's get on with our show. You ready? It's been just over a year, as I said before, that we relaunched Creative Third Thursdays here at Studio C, and after that launch party, our first creative who showed lots of promise was this gentleman that we're going to talk to with today. So he's still going strong, recently invited us to a recording session, and I collected this video.
This is only the beginning. following.
So please welcome Chilliwack Council member, law graduate, writer, speaker, and the Bigger Than Me podcast host, Aaron Pete, everybody.
Pleasure.
Good to see you again, man.
Good to see you too.
It's been a year. You realize that? You were our first guest, and it's so cool to see you back here again.
It's all I've been thinking about.
Tell us about what we just watched. What was going on there? Obviously, that was the recording of the podcast, but that's an exciting day, busy day for you, right?
Yes, back in person, which we've now recorded right over there, and it's been fantastic, but I've been missing the in-person interviews, and so that was Eddie Gardner, that one will be releasing next week, and Kylie Bartels, which just released this week, where we dive into self-care, how to approach family conflict, all of those topics.
So at this point, podcasting has established itself as a new form of journalism, really, right? And it mainly uses different methods to build an audience than traditional media. And each successful podcast out there has a distinctive style or tone. And so many people start podcasting and it peters, or so many people want to start podcasting or have thought about starting a podcast. Which brings me to what you have done, which is build a catalog of over 100 episodes. Quite a bit over 100 by now. It was a few weeks back. You're a busy guy. So I thought it would be interesting from that perspective for those people that are interested in podcasting to hear from somebody like you. So take it away. What does it take to be a podcaster these days and be successful at it?
I would say that podcasting is similar to like journaling. If you have thoughts that you have, if you're trying to find your voice, podcasting is one path to that. I find myself, I come from an oral tradition, and so a lot of the way I like to communicate is through long-form conversations. And so that's something that I'm passionate about. In regards to people who start and stop, I would say that they just don't have a long-term vision for it. So you're booking people maybe 2 weeks in advance, and then you don't know who to book next, and you take a break and you wait for the next person to come up, and then it kind of stalls out. You need to have like a 10-year plan, a 5-year plan, if you're going to treat it like a business, if you're going to commit to it the way that you want to in order to see it succeed long term.
So you've got a calendar of people, like a long list of do you have a list of people you want to have on and then you just move them onto your calendar kind of thing?
Yes, I have a long list of individuals who I think are feasible, that would be relatively easy to have on, and then the names where it might be a challenge, there might be somebody I have to book through, and then there's kind of the behemoths, the very unlikely, one day I hope I get the opportunity, but the long shots that are going to take a lot of years to build up their trust and confidence to get on.
So would you take me through a day in the life of Aaron Pete, the podcaster?
Ooh, most of it is, I would say, research. So I have a bunch of people on my list that I'd be interested in speaking with, but there needs to be something about them that stands out to me where it's like, I need to talk to this person, I need to understand their perspective, or a topic that gets me excited. So Chris Sims, we talk about taxes, and it feels like so many of the conversations we're having are around financial stress, and one of it is taxes. We tax people a fair bit, and it's not a topic we dive into very often. So with her, we sit down and we go through, where are all the taxes? Why did they come about? And are they living up to those expectations that we had when we brought in those taxes? And what are the impacts on everyday people? Because I like the idea of financial literacy. I just get worried that we're putting it back on the person when a lot of the reasons people stress financially is not of their own fault. It's of how we're making up our society, the prices of houses. That's not an individual person's fault.
So this is the interesting thing about your podcast, the diversity of topics. I mean, there's a topic, but the day I was recording, that was a rap star. That you were talking with. So you have how do you set a tone for your podcast and build when you have such a diverse audience?
So if you go on any like how to start a podcast recommendation forum, they say niche, like figure out if you want to talk about cats, like narrow it down to just that topic and stay there. And I can't do that. I've really enjoyed with my legal background being able to go through different topics and different problems our society's facing and talking about them. And so I don't have any personal interest in niching. I just have an interest in asking the right questions to the right people. And that's been my strategy moving forward.
So you kind of alluded to it before. Tell me why you were a podcaster.
I come from an oral tradition. A lot of people talk about how Indigenous cultures are like that, but we don't really talk about like why that might be valuable. And so I took a bunch of courses in law school, and one of them is written texts are hard for us to like internalize and connect with ourselves and really connect with. So like Shakespeare, lots of people know Shakespeare is an important guy, but what did he write? What did it mean to the society? How does it impact us today? Like these are challenging questions. The Bible, it's an important text. Why does it matter? What parts of it matter? With oral traditions, it's constantly being updated because you have to talk about it in order to agree on what it means. And so there's a bunch of geographic regions in our area that have been named through the Halkla-Malem language that actually have a connection. They have two purposes. One is a geographic location. So Chiam means always wild strawberries, but they often also have a story behind it, and that's a moral story, a lesson that you can take away from it. And so those two pieces make it easier for your brain to integrate than a written text.
That's fascinating. I never thought of it that way. And strawberries.
Strawberries.
I love strawberries.
Yeah.
So did you ever have moments questioning your choice to become a podcaster? Was it ever at any point discouraging as you went along your journey in the early days?
Probably at the beginning, there was a lot of like nervousness around like, what do I have to say? What would I talk about? What can I bring to the table? And I didn't really tell anybody about the podcast during that period. The only person who knew was my partner, Rebecca, and we were just in the planning phase. But since then, it's just been a commitment to deliver weekly content to people, have interesting conversations with people. The stress is always just getting on the next guest. How are we going to schedule this out? Increasing the amount of content. Usually people seem to like about 2 episodes a week. That's a lot of pressure to try and get two people on every week to be delivering that content.
So how much preparation goes into an episode?
It depends on the person. Some of them flow easy, where I know kind of a plan in mind, but there's a lot of research that goes into it just so I always have confidence that I can take it any direction. And the goal of an interview is to do as much research as possible and then take it to the places you didn't know it was going to go. So when I sat down with Caroline Phelps, we were supposed to talk about Squatch Eyes Lodge, the Indigenous hotel in Vancouver, how that came about, connecting people with the culture. And then she starts talking about Indian day school and how that impacted her hands, and how she was beaten on her hands for years, and how it had trauma on her hands, so she had to go to therapy for her hands, but also physiotherapy to try and bring back the strength in her hands. And so that was not planned. I had no idea that she had gone to Indian day school, but those are the topics you want to get to, the things that aren't in your research.
I notice that when you're doing your interviews, there's no list of questions often. I mean, I'm sure you have some reference you're going to go to bring the conversation together, but is there a philosophy around that? Did I hear that? Was that the last time we talked? Maybe I'm repeating something from last time we talked together.
Yeah, I'm very committed trying not to use written down things, information. Yeah. Because then you use that as like a crutch. It's like PowerPoint. PowerPoints are fantastic if they serve some sort of purpose, but they can often, you'll miss the most interesting part of what they have to say because you're focused on the next question, and that's always an inherent risk. And I want to get to those conversations that aren't a part of my notes.
Well, that's being a good interviewer is being also a very good listener. You got to, like you say, I mean, it's very easy to fall into a crutch of just jumping to the next question, whereas, the next question might come from the last answer, right? So it's a good skill to have.
That's one comment actually Tim made, was that he noticed that during interviews, he'll notice that the guest will actually sit back, have a little bit of a reaction of like, who the heck is this guy and where did he come up with this question from? And that's what you're trying to deliver on, because I can't guarantee the person it's going to reach 10,000 people, but if I can leave them with like this was worthwhile and I actually learned something about myself through the process, then that's a worthwhile endeavor.
So we were talking about earlier about being discouraged at any point. Was anybody that stepped up and encouraged you to continue, or to, what encouragement have you had along the way that's solidified your commitment to this podcast?
The lady sitting in the back there has been the person encouraging me throughout this, helping me plan guests, helping me email them. She now manages all of the social media. Tim's back there. He's the person who invited me to start working in the studio. He doesn't host a lot of podcasters in here, so it was an honor to have him come in. He's now a part of most of the end segments of the episodes, where him and I kind of do a post-show discussion on what we took away from that, on our thoughts. And I think that that's one of the keys that I'm starting to understand is people won't always tune in for the guest. Like if we're talking taxes, some people might, I don't really care about that. What they're tuning in for is for the discussion and for hopefully like my conversation and what I'm able to bring to the table. And so being able to do that end talk kind of solidifies like a community that you're starting to build where even if the guest doesn't interest you, hopefully the overall show does.
Do you get feedback from your audience?
Yes.
So you're hearing this back from your audience that they're tuning in for these conversations?
Yes, you can definitely see in the metrics, and then you can see from individuals reaching out saying that impacted me. When people like a post, when they react to it, I've gotten lots of messages from people saying, I've listened to like 70 episodes, and that's always crazy to hear. Some people's ability to commit and kind of go along for the ride.
Yeah, the cool thing about podcasts is that you can listen to them anywhere. You can listen in your car, you can listen on your walk. There's all kinds of ways that I'm sure that many people consume podcasts. So along the way, what have been some of your milestones? What things you go, oh, that was a development that has really helped me?
Probably when I realized that interviewing is its own skill. There was a part of me that sort of knew that, but once I started figuring out the interviewers that actually I admire and figuring out what they do that I admire, that's when I started to really hone this and get excited about the next episode, was because I knew what I wanted to bring out of that. So I don't know if you know who Sean Evans is, but he hosts Hot Ones, which is hot wings, where the hot wings get hotter and hotter, and he interviews celebrities, and you can start to see the sweat on their face, and that's a really unique way of going about it. But what I admire about him specifically is that he only has 10 words really to work with. So there's a conservation of language there that he's trying to prepare his question in such a succinct way. And then there's another individual, Ariel Hawani, and he does a good job of kind of going through the person's life in a journey way. And then he'll have the person back on later where they're able to just chop it up about current events. But his style of starting out, introducing you to the person in a really succinct and thoughtful way, I think is really valuable to connect people with like admirable people.
So who's your favorite interviewer of all the ones you've watched?
I've given credit to Sean Evans as probably my favorite because, again, I think there's an art to the conservation of words. And I'm actually going to be doing a Hot Ones episode here where we go through all the spicy wings, and I'm not good with spicy stuff, so that should be really fun for people to watch.
Will there be a studio audience opportunity for that?
There will not be, because I might start crying and falling apart. And Tim is all too excited for it back there.
So where do you see the future of this? Where's this going?
I think going more unique each time, so trying to figure out these lanes that other people aren't in, and starting to craft my own style of how do we make each episode interesting, again, even if you're not excited about the guest. That's the flavor that I'm working on right now.
So just as a complete sort of digression at this point, I just heard Alex Hart, and he's clicking his camera over there. We should pose. So how do audiences find the Bigger Than Me podcast?
Like, how do I gather my usual viewer?
How do you build that audience?
Often it's through collaboration. So like how you select guests, how you consider what their audience is, and then working collaboratively with them to market it to their community. So when we talked about rappers, I'm a huge hip hop fan. I had a ton of teachers who didn't think I was going to graduate high school. And rap was that area where people were like, I'm constantly being doubted and people are constantly betting against me. That was kind of my community. So I've noticed that community does really well on YouTube. When people tune in for those episodes, it's primarily through YouTube, and they often don't get asked about their music in thoughtful, deliberate ways. So that's been a way to grow it through YouTube. And then with podcasts, it's often the quality of the topic that's going to be taking place. People are willing to tune in for an interesting topic.
So your podcast can be found where? Like obviously Spotify,
Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and then you're always the person who comments in my comment section, Google Podcasts.
We had a little bit of back and forth about that one time.
We do.
It is, yeah. So what's it like serving your community as a counselor?
A lot of work, a lot of challenges, I would say, not with the community, but with my counterparts at the council level. That's where I've experienced some pushback and some challenge. So we're given portfolios in our Indigenous community. So I manage the housing portfolio. So we have basically band-owned, government-owned buildings that people live in. I'm also in charge of finance and tax, and those are my primary portfolios, as well as economic development. So those are broad responsibilities, and they each come with their own challenges. Housing is by far the most challenging portfolio, I'd say, for Indigenous communities, because we're not only the landlord, but we're the maintenance person, we're the person applying for more funding for repairs, and we're the person looking for new builds. And so there's a lot that goes into basically building out a community and looking for funds to do that. And then the maintenance of it has, I think, always been a challenge for Indigenous communities.
And so what else are you working on? Because as busy as this sounds, there's other things you're doing as well, right?
Yes, I sit on the board for Advantage Hope, and that's really exciting. Economic development is an area of interest for me. I think it's the way that you get many communities out of poverty. So I've had the pleasure of joining their team out in Hope, and so hopefully we'll be able to tie that in with Chihuahua's Economic Development Corporation and start to work on synergies there. I also sit on the Cultural Center board, but I'm looking at stepping back from that role. I think they're in good hands, and I work as a native court worker in the court system, assisting Indigenous people through the legal system, and I'm looking at opportunities to help education for judges across Canada.
Busy guy. He's in his 20s, though, so we were talking backstage about how busy you can be, and that's the time to be busy in your late 20s and early 30s. So continued success for you and the Bigger Than Me podcast, Aaron, and it's been really, really great to watch your journey, and we wish you all the best and continued success. Aaron Pete, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing this.
Yeah.
So thanks for doing this. We do have refreshments still in the lobby, and this is a tradition around here, how we end the YouTube portion of the program. And so cheers, everybody.